Good evening, everybody.
Evening.
Good evening, Ken.
Good to see everybody made it for another Sabbath, another episode of Line Upon Line. This one being episode 355. A third temple is necessary for the second coming of Christ. And we were just sitting around here telling war stories, not our war stories, but war stories nonetheless. So, Dr. Ricks, if you would start us out, that would be.
This joke is about people. Is it you don't know the Bible when you think the minor prophets worked in quarries. Okay, you keep falling every time the pastor tells you turn to second opinions. Okay, this one is called retirement breaks. The worst thing about retirement is having to drink coffee on your own time. Okay, I like it. These two cowboys were sitting on horseback. One says to the other one, "Did you hear California issue another stay-at-home order?" "Whoa," says the other cowboy, Texan. "Texas has been telling California for years." Okay, we might throw another retirement joke in the middle here. Um, Today's topic, as Ken mentioned, the third temple is necessary for the second coming of Christ. Netanyahu Trump factor. Um, so if you believe in Christ, you expect or believe in a coming third temple in Jerusalem. I mean, the real thing. Let me just add a little sidebar. It can't be some little mysterious synagogue off some hidden place somewhere, because if you look at all the scriptures, it's got to be impressive enough that a world wants to be crowned in that temple. Does that make sense? It's got to be something like it was in the ancient days, or significant, if you like that word better. Um, well, anyway, the disciples of Christ, actually, the story is retold in several places in the New Testament. They asked Christ, "What are the signs of your return and the end of this age?" We'll have the wonderful millennial age of Christ. When's it going to start? Well, of course, he says, "Watch out for being deceived." But then he says, "Is the temple being desolated?" Trigger. Would you read Matthew 24 for us, Ken?
Now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations. And then the end will come. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand."
We assume that the apostles were at least reasonably familiar with the Bible as it existed in those days. So they knew about Daniel's prophecy, and the Jews, of course, knew all about the desolating of the temple. That's what Hanukkah comes from. So they understood holy place. It can't be some obscure little place. It's got to be some place that would be considered the holy place. So all that tells me that there has to be a third temple before Christ comes back, because you can't stop the sacrifices if you haven't started them again. And right now, if someone were to ask you right now, do you think a third temple is likely? they would say not as much chance of a snowball in hell because at least 50% of the Jewish population in the nation of Israel is reasonably secular. I mean, they're Jewish and they keep Passover and a few other things, but they really aren't that religious. They are no way do they want a third temple. And the rest of the world doesn't want it either.
I believe they're going to build a third temple. My gut feeling is that Donald Trump will be part of that. And no, I don't mean disrespect about him, but Donald Trump wants to build a legacy, and that would be quite the legacy. That's something that would last 1,000 years. You know, he would build that temple. He's a builder. It would be opulent. It'd probably be based upon a lot of historical knowledge of what the original temples look like so that it could have a similar look. So I think that would be the case if he's reelected, especially. If not, I don't know. Either way, I think he'll be part of this. And I wouldn't be shocked if it happened before the end of the second term, that at least was started, if not completed.
I think it could be something much simpler. It doesn't have to necessarily be as opulent as the second temple. I think they might, conceivably they could start out with something, maybe not a tent like in the wilderness, but something that would serve its purpose, at least to begin with, and then they would try, maybe to build on it from there and make it better later on. But the Palestinians or whoever is controlling the mountain, I don't really keep up with that. If you believe that they believe that they can lie to their enemies in order to get what they want. And so therefore, I don't think it's inconceivable that they would be willing to agree to something to share that amount, knowing that in the future they have no intention of keeping them.
By the way, we're just speculating. Nobody knows for sure, but what you said, Tom, fits one historical pattern. When the second temple was built, and it was a reasonable building, but some of the old men who remember 70 years ago Solomon's temple cried because it just compared to Solomon's temple, it was mediocre. But that still took them, I believe, 7 years to build with a lot of political infighting, even get that done. But Herod, many centuries later, improved it dramatically and made it one of the wonders of the world. In other words, if you get it built and you get the Holy of Holies and then you get to start sacrificing, you can always improve on it later.
Well, they don't.
Apparently, Herod really improved on it greatly.
Modern construction methods. I watched whole hotels built. They bring in huge chunks of styrofoam, dense styrofoam, and they put a layer of this stucco over it. It looks like it's rock, but it's not. But they can build things extremely fast today if they really want to, and it probably wouldn't take a whole lot of time to make something that's quite extravagant, but fairly quick to build. Especially if you get the manpower to.
I kind of see. I'm sorry. I kind of see this. If it happens, there's going to be some kind of deal that would allow the sharing of that location. They could still keep the Dome of the Rock, and also have a temple up there. Also, that would be. Think about it. That would be. Like a concession of. See, we're all trying to get along together, when in reality, one side has no intention of trying to get along with the other. So it would have to be something that would fit in the area. They're not going to tear down the Dome of the Rock without starting a war.
Yeah. They might build in that other temple site that everybody's talking about right now. Because what they're calling the original temple site now it appears to be an Italian Fort Antonia. So possibly the actual temple site's down the road from there a little bit, and they might just go ahead and settle for that.
Anything is possible. By the way, even if you let's say we just make a theoretical debate that the archaeologists can't agree on exactly where the original temple was and whether it was shaped this way or this. In one sense, it doesn't really matter as long as the Jewish people and the outside world believe it's the temple site and they start to sacrifices there. Does that make sense? Even if you could make an argument that all the archaeologists don't agree as to which way it was shaped, whether it was a little further down the road or this road, um, it's interesting to see what happens. Let's go to Luke 21, because there's a little more to it I want to throw in the mix to think about at least.
Then, as some spoke of the temple, how it was adorned with beautiful stones and donations, he said, "These things which you see, the days will come in which not one stone will be left upon another that shall not be thrown down."
I think this is true. I'm not going to say I'm an expert on building or anything, but I think this is true. If you look at the Great Pyramids, they were huge stones that were cut off-site and through, all kinds of slave labor and animals pulling it, and ramps, they put them in place. Well, supposedly the temple was even more precise, not as big, not as tall, but even more precise than the pyramids. They were huge blocks, many of them marble, very expensive stuff that Solomon had dragged down whatever mountains and a lot of labor to put it in exactly the right place it was planned, so they didn't have to have all that cutting and chiseling, and the whole all planned in advance and then assembled with very little space between it. No, it was just perfect engineering for its day. And so the disciples look at these huge marble stones that took all kinds of effort to get there, and they said they're going to all be torn down. They couldn't believe it. But here's the but part. The Jews believe, as the archaeologists can argue this, the Jews believe that one of the outer walls, not the courtyard, not the temple, but the outer wall, did not get torn down completely, and it's called the Wailing Wall. If, let's just say for the sake of discussion, if that's true, and that outer wall becomes the outer wall of the new temple, whichever direction they shape it, whatever they do, then you could argue Christ's prophecy has not fully come true yet, because every stone has not been torn down. You see how that could work? That the full fulfillment is yet to come.
Well, that's true, but what's left of what they say is the temple is very massive, and it would take a great earthquake probably to knock all of that over. And even still, he said not one stone would be upon another. That means nothing could be stacked. I mean, everything, once it's done, would all have to be, one layer.
That's why I don't believe that's the original temple. There's some other things too, but I don't believe that is it. I believe it's down the road where there's a site where there was a building where they have running water, where they could wash the temple out and that kind of thing. When you slaughter animals, you have to clean it. And so I just too much evidence for me that it was at another location.
By the way, there's one more issue to think about. Up until about 1400s, the greatest defense of any city were walls. They had all, Constantinople. One of the famous battles regarding Constantinople was, I think it was the Islamic Empire, and I forget all the names of the leaders, but they got artillery. That was a new thing being developed in those days. And they proved something, and of course, after that, walls became irrelevant in warfare for the most part. With artillery, you can blast walls to smithereens. It might take a while, but you just position your artillery, you just come bombard it, and you break it down. So with modern weapons, that could be done. And maybe other things too. Maybe weapons we haven't even seen yet. But no wall is safe like it used to be. And that was a big breakthrough in warfare when, I forgot the Turk's name, but I showed that artillery could destroy walls, and warfare was never the same again. They have some value, but not nearly what they used to have. You got to now get down into the earth under bullet range to be safe from bullets and artillery. You got to dig underground and hope you'll be safe. Even the famous Maginot Line, which was, all these tunnels and brick embankments, the Germans modern military made a, they made
you
it
have.
irrelevant. Even the Maginot Line didn't really hold them back. Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I sort of wonder, why would the temple that Christ was pointing to, why would it have to be destroyed? To me, it seems that it had to be destroyed so that a new one could be rebuilt, which that's what we believe. But I wonder if that had to be destroyed where it was so that a new one could be rebuilt somewhere else, or maybe a facsimile that really wasn't the true. Obviously, it's not going to be God's true temple. I mean, he's not going to be there. They think he might be there, but we know better than that. So, it's going to be a temple, but it's not really going to be God's house, so to speak.
Right.
I think the end result. Go ahead, Ken.
I was going to say, regardless of where it's built, I think we'll recognize it as what Christ was referring to.
Yeah.
I believe it's got to be an opulent place because of why would the beast power want to be in there?
Yeah.
I mean, look at all of the stones and silver and gold and that they have in all their churches and stuff. You would think that the Pope would want to look over and go, man, that's nicer than what I've got. I have a multi-million-dollar homes online, and he likes to get. He's a Jewish guy, so he doesn't like the Christian TV evangelists, and he tries to pit them against each other. It's like, you're not going to let him get that, are you? To sell them. So I think it's going to be the end. I don't know what it'll start out as, but the end result is it's going to, I believe, be an opulent place.
I believe you're right, Dave. Because, Dave, it makes sense. You think of the beast. Let's say he's got most of Europe united under his power. And they got some big cathedrals in Europe. They're probably empty for the most part nowadays, but some of them I bought and all kinds of pretty artwork and stuff. That means this temple has got to get international fame as the holy place, the holy mountain of the whole world. And by the way, the original temple and Herod's temple, I believe the reason the Romans did so much destruction, it was gold plated. I don't know the word to describe it. Maybe it's like a 4-story building, but the whole thing was gold plated. There was so much gold and silver that it was like a fortune. And these Roman soldiers are going to get their share of it. And I believe I'm saying this, I can imagine some very rich Jewish people, once they get the temple moving, they said, we don't want our religion to be represented by some ordinary temple. We want it gold plated like Solomon's temple. What do you think?
It's as good as a thought as any.
And gold is a very malleable, precious metal. I believe you can shape it in all kinds of ways, and there are probably other ways I haven't thought of to coat buildings with it, and it doesn't corrode like some things. You may have to polish it, but gold will last for thousands of years, apparently. They're even finding Spanish gold doubloon in the Caribbean. So I can see some Jewish people who are worth billions seeing to it that this is a fabulous temple. Maybe they'll put it on the internet with lights on it. You can go to the internet website 24/7 and see the Holy Mountain. There'll be the Dome of the Rock off in the corner, and then this beautiful marble-laid gold building.
There'll be virtual tours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It'll gain fame.
That you'll have to pay.
Yeah. Also, I agree with something else you said, Dave. Trump, even if he gets a second term, he could do the temple after he's out of office. If they just get it started and he can get permission from the key players to let it happen.
Trump seems to like the Israeli people and the Jewish people. He dealt with businessmen his whole life, and some very shrewd Jewish businessmen in New York. And I'm sure he learned a lot from them, and so he respects them. And he seems to like Netanyahu, and his daughter converted to Judaism, and apparently Jared Kushner is a pretty smart young man.
By the way, the rumor is that Kushner was the brains behind that last peace deal. I don't know how true that is, but Trump might have been the muscle, but Kushner was the brains. You think that's possible?
I don't know, but what I do know is they signed an agreement, and they cannot last more than 7 years by Islamic law.
So they can get out of it if they want to.
They just break it. To sign the contract with the Kufar, which is what we are, for no more than 7 years, and they can break it anytime they want. And the only purpose for that is so that they can rebuild their army.
This deal does do, it circumvents the PLO. They now have a lot less power, and the UAE and Israel and America are making the decisions about Israeli settlements and what they get. The PLO is almost becoming toothless. It just gives you one reason the PLO might decide to cooperate so they can get back in the game. But all this, we'll have to wait a year or two to see what can be done. But let's go to Daniel 11 and look at the scripture that Christ was talking about.
For ships from Cyprus shall come against him. Therefore he shall be grieved and return in rage against the holy covenant and do damage. So he shall return and show regard for those who forsake the holy covenant. And forces shall be mustered by him, and they shall defile the sanctuary fortress. Then they shall take away the daily sacrifices and place there the abomination of desolation.
So poor Antiochus was going back to in his battle with the king of the south, and the Roman Empire's navy, and one of their big admirals, senators showed up, and it's a really interesting story, but basically embarrassed him. The Roman Empire was getting that strong, and he said, we don't go for all this fighting between you two anymore. Go back up north and leave these folks alone. Rome is kind of securing the peace of the area, or some words like that. That really humiliated him. So he had control of the Holy Land, the king of the north, but on his way back up north, it's like he took his vengeance out on the Jewish people in the temple.
But if you read on the following three scriptures, this really is a prophecy also of the tribulation. These things will take place during the tribulation. And it even says that those that do wickedly against the covenant. So there's going to be people betraying God's law, whether it be Jewish people, I don't know. But then it says after that there will be those that will do instruct many, which is when the tribulation is when the church is going to do the second half of Christ's ministry. That's why we're going to be attacked. We're not going to be hiding in our houses. We're going to be out speaking out. And that's why we're going to be suffering.
Would you read verse 32, Ken?
Those who do wickedly against the covenant shall corrupt with flattery, but the people who know their God shall be strong and carry out great exploits. And those of the people who understand shall instruct many. Now when they fall, they shall be aided with a little help. But many shall join with them by intrigue until the time of the end, because it is still for the appointed time.
Now let's look at the history, what happened 167 and 169 BC, before Christ, or they now call it before the Common Era. Antiochus apparently undermined worship of the true God, and it got a lot of the sects to go over to the pagan side. Some commentators said even the high priest was seduced. And then he basically shocked them all by desecrating the temple, by slaughtering pig's blood in the sacred altar and putting a statue of Zeus in there, which to the Jews is an abomination. Now, those that were strong were the Maccabees, who fought a war with him. Basically, they won, kicked him out, and they cleaned out the temple, and that's Hanukkah. Like you say, Tom, that's a model of what's going to happen in the end time. I don't exactly know how it fits, but can you see there are a lot of non-religious Jews and a lot of left-wing Christians that I think the beast could seduce them to betray their religious cousins.
Absolutely. That's how it's going to happen. If you think about it, if someone comes in by force and does all of this, there would be a huge uproar. People they wouldn't stand for it. But if you have people working behind the scenes, getting in league with this beast power and being, gradually allowing this to take shape, it's much easier to have that happen without the entire world coming unglued. But there will be those that know what's going on and will speak out against it, including the church. I mean, the church is going to be speaking out against what's going on during that time and warning people. And that's why it says we will instruct many. Many people in the world, the ones that are going to be converted at the end time, just before the end, and as it says in Revelation, the innumerable multitude who've washed themselves in the blood of Christ. Those are the people that the church will be instructing and helping to bring into the first resurrection.
By the way, here's a shocking thought. In the old worldwide days, they said if you didn't go to a place of safety or you were martyred, that meant you were a weak Christian. That actually is the exact opposite. When you read the Bible and commentaries, to be a martyr for Christ, like the Apostle Paul, he said, "I'm ready to be spent." If you are a martyr for Christ, that's a heroic thing. So if you're out there left when others are in places of safety preaching the gospel, maybe that means that God has a great destiny for you and you're strong enough to handle it. Being persecuted, that is. I mean, it's the opposite of what most people think. Oh, no one gets persecuted except bad Christians. No, that's actually not historically true.
No, it's going to be the church, and not everybody in the church, because Christ said, some of you, not a hair on your head will perish. But the leadership of the church, could be us. We don't know who is going to be speaking out. We're going to be on video. Obviously, we are now. As they say, nothing on the internet ever goes away. I mean, it's there forever. And they're going to know who's speaking out about what we're saying tonight. And so those are the people that'll get martyred. I mean, I hate to say it, but we have a greater reward waiting for us, after that short period of suffering.
And in the end, we win.
That's right.
Absolutely. In the end, we win.
The good guys always win.
Yeah, that's right. They wear the white hats and ride the big horses. But Daniel 9:27.
Then he shall confirm a covenant for 1 week with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to the sacrifice and offering. And on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate, even until the consummation, which is determined, is poured out on the desolate.
So this guy, the destroyer of the temple, will be destroyed when Christ comes back. But the middle of the week, we believe there's like a 7-year period when a lot of this stuff starts to happen. And in the middle of that, with 3.5 years, maybe plus or minus 30 or 40 days, that's when he's going to double cross the Jews and desolate the temple. And that's like a trigger. When that happens, well, we're on a countdown to the return of Christ. We'll get to the exact numbers in a minute. So that it is a trigger. Now we're going to speculate for a little bit on what's going to happen. And the reason I put in the article, if you read it below, I put the word speculate because I realize that you know, 15 years from now and nothing's happened, everybody says, "Oh, you thought, the temple was going to be built in 3 or 4 or 5 years, nothing happened." So, admittedly, it's speculation. It may not happen, but to me, I look at moving the temple to Jerusalem as a sign. And here's how I look at it. I remember, Trump promised it during the campaign, but about 4 or 5 other presidents said the same thing. But they always said, the Arab world won't tolerate it. There's no way we can do it. I'm sorry about that. And everybody expected Trump to do the same thing. And Trump said, when he announced that he was going to do it, a week or two before he actually put it into place, he was getting calls from all over the world. So don't do it. You can't do it. The world will fall apart. And he's stubborn enough. I guess that's the right word. Is the right word stubborn? Committed. That's a better word. He's committed enough that he doesn't care what all these other world leaders in Washington say. He did it. The reason why and he made it work. The Arab world didn't fall apart. The PLO demonstrated, but they're always demonstrating. It's actually not unusual. He's the type that if Netanyahu is able to work it out, maybe he can or can't, that he can get it through. The Jewish people are going to do it. And you got to stop this. You can't cooperate. Trump is just committed or stubborn enough to say, I'm going to do it anyway. He's that kind of personality.
Yep.
He's used to getting everything he wants.
That can be a good thing or a bad thing, right?
Well, but he's used to getting his way. He said he was going to build a wall, and they've got, I think, 300 miles already. I had a guy in my place, this has been, I don't know, a year ago. He said, walls don't work. And I go, I don't understand. And he goes, walls don't work. I go, they are in here, working fine.
By the way, the Russians put up the Iron Curtain. Maybe it wasn't all walls. Some with machine gun nests, barbed wires, and certain poles and stuff. But the point is, it was a type of wall. It did work, right? It kept all the people from Eastern Europe from leaving the horrors of communism.
Yep. You know what? That's one thing you could share. You should share with people. A lot of the younger people never seen they had no idea about the wall, the Berlin Wall. But those people wanted out. That was a wall to keep people in. And it was communism they wanted to flee. So these younger generation need to understand this. That wall was to keep people in these communist countries, not to keep people from getting into West Germany.
Yeah, they know our schools teach them nothing about the importance of the fall of the Berlin Wall or the evils of communism. These kids are being miseducated. Oh, well, I'll probably get off this. Oh, America's bad. Frederick Douglass, famous abolitionist, and whose statues are being torn down, would you believe? Black man. He's very successful. He said when he started to study the American Constitution, he realized the 3/5 clause was put in there so the northern free states could out other states and eventually vote slavery out. Obviously it didn't work that way, but that was the intent. And he said that was the first major country, or at least a big chunk of it, slavery was outlawed. Because when they're part of the British Empire, you could have slaves anywhere you want, New York, Connecticut. And no one realizes that. They don't teach anything in public school but crap. But walls do work. By the way, do you know a lot of politicians live behind walls, gated communities?
Most all of them.
Last year, Laura Loomer jumped a wall at Nancy Pelosi's house with 2 Mexican guys who hardly spoke English, but she paid them to say, "We love Nancy. We love Nancy." So the police were called and they told her she had to leave. And she said, "I'm sorry, but walls are immoral." And the police let her stay there for like 45 minutes or an hour to record. Said, but you got to go. She said, but walls are immoral. Nancy Pelosi told me walls are immoral. And then these two Mexican guys said, we love Nancy. We love Nancy.
Only if it's not Pelosi's walls. Or what's that Lori Lightfoot who gets her own security, or she gets to kick the protesters off her street, but not everybody else's
Have
street.
you done any research on her husband?
Socialists, progressives will never live in the world they prescribe for us.
Have you done research on Lori Lightfoot's spouse?
I know she's married to a woman.
No.
Anything else to know about her?
No. She's married to a man who had a sex change to become a woman.
Oh.
And looks like
is that better or worse? I don't know. I'm confused.
It's bad. It's bad.
See, I'm so out of it. I don't know if that's good or bad anymore. It's confusing.
When people are telling me that they don't like me, I start looking up why don't they like me? You know?
Well, the hypocrisy. But if communism took over, everybody is desperately poor except the party leaders.
Yep. Everybody's equally poor. That's how they all be.
By the way, one of the things that I speculated, two things got the second temple built. They had Cyrus, the support of a superpower, that was the Persian Empire, which was quite something in those days. By the way, the leader was named over 100 years before he actually did what he did by a prophet of God. So all of this was prophesied, but Cyrus, the superpower, financed and gave political cover for the Jews to build the temple. And they had a strong leader, Nehemiah. And when you read the story in the book of Nehemiah, there's one scene I love. His enemies are trying to undermine him, mostly the Arabs and the country live around him, to not build the temple, not build the wall. And they want him to hide out. And Nehemiah says, should a man such as I hide from threats on my life? Can you imagine how bold and brave he was? They spoke, there's a great plot. They're going to kill you for sure. He said, should a man such as I hide? It gives you some idea he was a very brave guy. And those two built the second temple. Well, could Netanyahu and Trump fulfill the same role? America's a superpower. America's influence is growing. And Netanyahu is the very patriotic Jewish leader.
You know, if what we're saying about Trump and the temple and all that is actually true, then we've answered the question on whether or not he's going to get reelected.
Yeah, I think he's going to get reelected. I realized all these polls say he won't. I don't believe them, but I could be wrong.
They said the same thing about
Well, Hillary came out and said under no circumstances, no matter what the outcome is, do not concede.
Oh, I heard that she didn't want to concede the night she lost. They put a lot of pressure on her. I won't go into all the stuff I heard behind the scenes, but she waited till like 2:33 a.m. She did not want to concede.
They said that she started drinking heavily when she started seeing the polls, and they actually took her home or got her out of there before anything was, able to be recorded or whatever.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah.
There's a famous picture of her all scrunched up and crying. I know you've probably seen it. Her face is all contorted in tears, like a little child throwing a fit because they didn't get what they wanted.
You look like you enjoyed.
Oh, I did. I especially love the video of the crying, of the crowd crying.
Oh yeah, there's one lady on her knees crying.
Looking forward to another video similar to that.
Oh yeah.
Well, they're running on. You can't have a car over 10 years old. No more fossil fuel vehicles. Everybody's going to have to rebuy all their cars. And literally saying we're going to have a nationwide mandate that you can't leave your house without a mask on.
And even outside with a mask.
Outside
with a mask. How hard that's going to be on some people.
I bought a saber-toothed tiger mask that doesn't do any protection of any kind. It's just a saber-toothed tiger. And I gave it to one of my 11-year-old kids in the school. I said, if they tell you have to wear a facial covering, here you go. He was so excited to get that. He was putting it on and showing everybody. I have a doctor's exemption. You should see him at the hospital and clinics. I go in and go, I can't wear a mask. Here's number one, they're not allowed to ask me why, and they always do. So I tell them that's a $17,000 fine, but I'll tell you why. And I get in my doctor's office and out of my doctor's office quickly. There's no sitting in that lobby all day long.
Treat you like this, right?
Oh, they're like, come sit over there away from everybody, and then they come and get me quickly. They rush me in there, and he comes in and he quickly does what he's got to do, and boom, he's gone.
I went into Best Buy today without a mask, and they were not happy with me, but too bad. Deal with
CDC came out with a new directive that people who are not symptomatic should not be tested.
Yes.
Hey, I hope they do that. I think a lot of these tests are false positives.
Well, you're not contagious if you have no symptoms. You're not contagious. You can have a virus inside, but it doesn't mean that you're producing it outwardly.
Yeah.
My wife did some research on it, and the COVID-19 is a very specific virus. COVID in and of itself has multiple forms. And so all of us, or a lot of a COVID virus on us and are not sick, and it's not the 19, but they're labeling it that way.
Yeah, I believe there's a lot of false positives. They're running the numbers up politically, and what can I say? Things go a certain kind of way.
My problem is in 20 years, we're going to have a problem with the numbers not working because of them doing what they're doing with the numbers. So the science won't be there.
Right. Are we ready? Are we moving on to? Are we going to?
Yeah, let's go to Ezra 1. Let's go to Ezra 1.
Thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth the Lord God of heaven has given me. And he has commanded me to build him a house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Who is among you all of his people? Who is among you of all his people? May his God be with him, and let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build the house of the Lord God of Israel, which is in Jerusalem. King Cyrus also brought out of the article of the house of the Lord, which Nebuchadnezzar had taken from Jerusalem, and put in the temple of his gods.
So all those silver and gold artifacts, many of them were just like in storage by Nebuchadnezzar. They came right back to the Jewish temple. All those nice, expensive things were there and available for the temple. And that's what a superpower could do, theoretically. That's why I think Trump's going to get reelected. Don't let the polls shake you up too much. And if chance to at least maybe start the process of rebuilding the temple. And maybe, like you're saying, Tom, maybe the PLO says, hey, we've become irrelevant with all this stuff that Trump and Netanyahu and the UAE are doing. If we cooperate on this third temple, we'll get some relevance. And what we can do is we'll wait till they get it started for a few, and then we'll blow it up.
Sure. They can always blow it up in the future. That's what they do anyway.
I mean, wouldn't somebody reason like that, or am I stretching the truth too much?
No.
I guess we will see how that all works itself out. Let's go to Revelation 11, 1 through 3.
Then I was given a reed like a measuring rod, and the angel stood saying, rise and measure the temple of God, the altar and those who worship there. But leave out the court which is outside the temple, and do not measure it, for it has been given to the Gentiles. And they will tread the holy city underfoot for 42 months. And I will give power to my 2 witnesses, and they who prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth.
So the way we picture it is centered at the temple. That will be their headquarters, at least in some respects. They may have hotel rooms somewhere else, but centered at the temple, the two witnesses for 3.5 years will preach, and it'll irritate and aggravate the world. But the part I think is interesting is the outer court. Some of that space will be given to the Dome of the Rock. And like you were saying, Tom, I can see how they could sell it to the world. They could say, look, this way, this holy mountain that's holy to all three religions will be available. The Jews will make some deal where Christians can come in a certain part of the temple, build little meeting halls, whatever they set up, where Christians could also worship on the Temple Mount. And Jews, of course, will be in charge. They'll worship there. And then the Arabs have their Alaska Mosque and the Dome of the Rock, so they could work. You see how that sounds so beautiful? All three religions sharing the holy mountain. And wouldn't that be where, if you wanted to be crowned God, isn't that where you'd want to be?
Yeah, it makes
Now, obviously, a lot of things have to happen before that's ready. But if they just get the temple built now, some of those other prophecies can kick in a few years later. I think of it this way. Once the temple is there and people get used to the morning and evening sacrifices, it'll be a big deal at first. And then you get used to it. Then you forget about it. And then it becomes kind of routine. And that sets up the stage for a surprise attack Sunday. Tom?
No, I was just going to say that's exactly what happened with Israel before. I mean, sacrifice after sacrifice after sacrifice. After you've killed so many animals, it's just another animal. It doesn't have any meaning anymore of why you're killing the animal.
Yeah, you get used to it. And by the way, most people don't know this, but only certain parts of it got burned up, sacrificed to God. The priest had a real good cut of the meat, and the rest of the Levites, maybe it's more than just one person got the meat, and the family that brought the offering, they got the rest of it. So it was sort of like a family barbecue. You take the rest of that meat home with you somewhere else in Jerusalem and have a big barbecue roast, or so it was really a fun time if you look at it that way.
Well, imagine like churches today, and one big church that goes through a lot of rituals. People go in there and they go through it. Okay, let's get this over with so we can go home. You can see that happening with the Jewish people during the time of the temple, that it was more of a discussion of who's going to get the best cut of meat today. Not we're killing this poor animal because we have sinned and we have need of forgiveness and reflect on that. No, they probably didn't even do that anymore at some point. They just, let's get our cut of meat and let's get out of here.
Because when you read we don't have all the scriptures here, but when you read all the scriptures further down in Matthew 24 and in Luke, I think it's 22, you get the impression that God warns about being caught off guard. You get so used to the temple that you take it for granted and you're not spiritually alert. And that includes the Jewish people specifically, but I think Christians indirectly are also implied in that too, because it's a trigger for bad things starting to happen to Christians later as well. So you want to be spiritually alert. Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves, aren't we? But remember, now here's the part that's more speculative and a little mystery. The temple is a trigger to the return of Christ, but the exact date is still, there are a few things that aren't nailed down. Let's go to Daniel 12:10 and start looking at how the temple is a trigger to the return of Christ.
Many shall be purified, made white and refined, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand. But the wise shall understand, and from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away, and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,290 days.
Now you'll notice that that's 30 days long, years, and that always bothers people. Does that mean the temple is desolated a month before the 3.5 final years? and you got 1290 years before Christ comes back. Now, read the next verse and you get even more stuff to think about. Go ahead, Kent. Let's read verse 12.
Blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days.
Now you got an additional 45 days. The question is, we know that Christ is coming back roughly 3.5 years after that. Because of that 30 and 45 days, we're left with how does that fit? And there are all kinds of people who speculate, but I don't think anybody knows yet. Now, maybe witnesses will explain it all to us in the end time. Let's go to verse 9 and tell you why I think maybe the witnesses will figure it out.
And he said, Go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end.
So even Daniel didn't really understand all that stuff. It's like God said it's sealed, and no one will probably figure out, the extra 30 days, extra 45 days, until we get close to the end. But it is obviously a trigger. When that happens, you know that Christ is almost here. Bad persecution is coming, and great deception is coming. And the way the Bible's written, you need to be ready before that happens. What do you think, Ken?
Yeah, I think we should always be ready. But yes, you definitely. A lot of people are going to wake up because of this, because of the signs that they see. But yes, we always got to be ready, just like the virgins.
And you get the feeling, the way it's written up in Matthew, especially, if you say to yourself, I'll wait till I see the temple desolated, then I'll get more serious about being with Christ. If you take that attitude, you may not be able to handle it.
Or you may miss it. You may not understand what
Yeah.
it says that we won't if it isn't for God's intervention, the elect wouldn't know what's going on. Basically, they would fall for this if it wasn't for God's intervention. And if you're holding out, you may have fallen.
You see, that is what tells me or leads me to believe that, when we read Daniel 11 earlier, that verses 30 through 35, where some will betray the covenant. Those are, I believe, the people who are not. Those are some of the elect who are going to be fooled. Because the only way you're not going to be fooled is if you stay close to the scriptures and stay close to God, and you know what's going to happen. So, like for us, for example, right now we know what's going to happen. As long as we stay close to the scriptures, we won't be fooled. But there are some in the church that will be fooled because they are not staying close to God and the scriptures. And they will, I believe, help bring that abomination of desolation into that temple.
There's one thing that's interesting. When you read, we're going to go to 2 Thessalonians. I believe that's our last scripture. I'm going to read that in a minute. But when you read that whole section, the way it's written up, this man has so much charisma with the help of the devil and whatever, and maybe the media, that he is going to deceive pretty much, I'd say at least the whole Western world and Latin America, probably Africa. China might be a different story, but most of the world will be totally deceived by that guy. It reminds me of this one British writer who didn't believe in Adolf Hitler, but he went to the stadium in 1936, and then Hitler made this little appearance, and everybody shot, the Hail Caesar thing, and they started saying, Heil Hitler. The guy spoke German, so he understood the Germans. He said the emotion of the moment was so great, he had to sit on his hands to keep from doing that. In other words, this guy is going to have, I'd say, twice the charisma that Hitler ever had, and maybe even more help from the devil than Hitler had. So if you're not close to God, you might be deceived.
Something just occurred to me. All the religions of the world are based in similar pagan backgrounds. And this, all of them, Buddhism, Catholic religion, most Christianity, Islam, they're all based in part of similar pagan symbols. And this leader is probably going to have a bit of all of that rolled up into him. He will appeal to all the world's religions because they all, I mean, so much of what the Catholic and nominal Christians believe is based in paganism. And all of what the Muslims and the Hindus and all of them, the world religions are all based in, if you go back far enough, they're all based in the same pagan roots.
Well, if you look at what I'm sorry.
You know,
if you look at what the current Pope has done, welcoming, what was it, the Imam or whoever it was, he welcomed him into the Vatican. Not saying this Pope is going to be the end time Pope, but it does seem like this Pope is wanting to bring all religions together.
Yep, and the pagan forms of that, well, this guy's going to appeal to all of that.
And it does make kind of common sense. I mean, I can see even academics saying, well, if we're going to have religion anyway, why don't we have a universal religion where we all worship the same system? And if we have a guy who can unify it, isn't that wonderful? A world all unified. It sounds good in a sense.
Yeah. And when you think about it, it will unify the whole world except for two. The Jews and us.
Well, yeah. Hopefully most of us, but there will be a portion. A portion will be fooled, and that's makes me wonder if this person that's going to be so charismatic is not going to do something that would lead part of the church to say, yeah, this guy really is one of us. What could that be? I wonder sometimes. Or whether they're just so fallen away from the truth that they are willing to go along with anything.
One thing
but it makes you wonder.
One thing I've noticed, when people fall out of the church, now they don't say they fall out of the church, they come up with some new doctrines and doing their thing, but it's like a slippery slope. Once you leave certain key church, people go off on your own, it doesn't take long for you to fall far away from the truth. I remember when Worldwide said, well, we're going to just do Saturday or Sunday. You can choose whichever one. I knew that was just a front. And then some other things that they put in. I won't go through all the detail. But it didn't take long before they were to the left of the Baptists. I mean, doctrinally speaking. And I could see, looking at all the scriptures in the Bible, a lot, and even many mainstream Protestants, and if I were to tell them today, someday some of you are going to worship a man, they would laugh. But if the Bible if we understand the Bible correctly, it will happen someday. And everyone will be shocked. But I can see someone like Oprah saying, isn't it? And I'm sure she's a wonderful person, but isn't it wonderful? We're all unified.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's gonna be some amazing
peace when there is no peace.
Yeah.
False peace, and then it suddenly says, and then if you're not with God, it's going to be too late to rally. At least that's the way the New Testament is written. Let's go to our last scripture. 2 Thessalonians.
Now, brethren, concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our gathering together to him, we ask you not to be soon shaken in mind or troubled, either by spirit or by word or by letter, as if from us, as though the day of Christ had come. Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God.
Notice the words, falling away comes first. That doesn't just have to mean from the true church. It probably means some of that too. But even the truth that people do have, because there are a lot of churches that have some truth, they're going to fall away from some of the truth they have now. And how right now we would all say, well, these people all know better than to worship a man. Wouldn't we all say that?
Well, I'll save my comments for when we're off air.
But I believe some of us will live to see people worshiping a man who should know better.
It will be convenient, and people like to eat.
And you know, the funny thing is, I'm not saying this mask thing is exactly the same thing. But you know, you have the mask police. People that run around screaming at other people who don't wear it. I'll turn you in, whatever. Can you see people doing that? They're not supporting the mark of the beast, whatever the details may be. I can see, by the way, the communists did that. Have people, I believe some of my Chinese college students, they were students who kept watch over the other students, spying on each other,
Yep.
and didn't. Go ahead.
So I'm just saying this mask is a small taste of that what's to come. It's just and that's why maybe it sticks in my craw and your guys' craw a little more than it does the average person, but I really don't like it, and that's why I push it every chance I get. I just don't wear it. And one place told me I couldn't come in if I didn't have it on.
I look at them and go, in what world would you put a mask on this face?
That's
That's a sin against nature. How dare you? Look again.
I agree with you, Dave.
And I tell my kids to do the same thing up there. Well, and my adults, I go, I tell the little girls, go, look how pretty I am. You would put a mask on this? That's terrible. That's a sin against nature itself. You should be ashamed of yourself and just ignore them and do what you do. And I have them practice it.
You are an
Not laughing, have
instigator.
a straight face.
You're the bad influence my parents.
Now, their parents love it. So
You know, the funny thing is, if you're a good-looking man, you know, good-looking women get attention, good look at attention. You get kind of spoiled by it, right, Dave?
I do. I do.
Oh, don't feed his
Okay,
ego.
it's time to cut
Don't
this off.
feed his ego.
It's time to
Oh,
get
man.
easy.
I was going to say, I understand, Dave.
I knew you would. I knew you would.
Well, we still believe what we've been saying all along. There's going to be a false peace and great deception. We need to watch and stay alert because we might think, no, we could never drift away from God. We could never be lured by sin or seduced by a friend to go on toward the dark side. But I bet a lot of people have thought that.
Yeah, it's arrogance to think that. If you're saying nothing like that could ever happen to me, that is a form of arrogance, and you need to be humble and realize it can happen to you.
Yeah, we need to stay alert. By the way, one of the things that I think will help us stay alert, if you can afford it, I realize that, go to the feast every year, and if possible, go to Pentecost and Days of Unleavened Bread every year too. I think the reinforcements will help you.
Yep. Every holy day and every feast and everything throughout the year is another little milestone, another outpost to get us to the next one and keep us on the.
Also, if you're going to Branson, it appears from what I heard, you need to get if you want a condo, no matter what level, high, medium, or low, you need to get your reservation in by or before September 2nd, or it goes into the pool. And apparently, I have a hard time believing it with tourism being down, the condos are being rented up, snapped up. You may not get one, or you may have to pay more for even a motel room because the default reservations made by a certain date, so they can plan to fill up, the ones that we don't take. So get your reservations in. And I know Florida has tons of rooms, so you probably don't have to worry about it. But if you want to stay at the Majestic close, is there a possibility, Tom, that if you wait till the last minute, you might not get a room in the Majestic either?
I know I honestly haven't heard anything about that, but it's very possible. It seems like there's a lot of condos available from what we looked at VRBO online.
Okay.
Although for Myrtle Beach, I went to the one. There's the landmark, and then right behind it, on to the one side, there is a brand new, real nice condos back there, and they were starting to get thin. And I know you gotta get your order in, probably similar to Branson soon. So anybody going to Myrtle Beach, which is where you should go, by the way, if you might want to call the Landmark Resort and get that settled up. You can go with the Landmark, the new section of the Landmark, or I think you get the same pricing or a discount pricing at the one right next door is the Palace. So, which is it's handy because there's all the parking there. I stayed down the road at another hotel last year. I wish I would have stayed closer, just because it's just more convenient, and plus you've got access. You can walking distance to a little Walmart and another grocery store and everything around there. So, I would try to get in there as soon as I could.
Yeah, and I told somebody this. We were talking about a California feast. I said, I know we don't know for sure what's going to happen, but I said, say if you want to go to Florida or Branson, get a reservation that you think you want, and then a week before, if California is open or you change your mind, you can cancel, and I believe you get a total refund. I mean, they take a little
Right.
percentage to hold it. If you cancel like a week before, you get a total refund, and it gives them plenty of time to rent it to somebody else. Surely by then you'll know if you'd rather go someplace else.
At the Landmark, it's 72 hours. You have a 72-hour grace period. You can cancel up to 72 hours before you're registered to arrive. So that's pretty reasonable. That's fair. I think that's more than fair. So we got up till 3 days before to see if things fall apart or not, and I think we'll be okay. In fact, we have an open door policy. If your group does not, if you're in another group, if you're not in our church and you want to go to the feast and yours cancels, look ours up, get online, go to Intercontinental Church of God, and scroll down to the feast sites, and we have several all over the country. So if you want to go, we'll be here. We're we're pretty stubborn about it, so we're going to do our best to have a feast, unless they absolutely force it.
Yeah, and by the way, this year we're going to be at LBL, Land Between the Lakes, Kentucky, which we weren't there last year. I mean, it's on the website, but just in case you don't know, you can also go to our feast at Land Between the Lakes, Kentucky, which is right off I-24 for those traveling. Next week, we're going to talk about the value of trumpets and atonement. I believe it's the 19th of September. You realize that's only 3 weeks away?
Yeah, I know. I noticed today how close to September we are.
And I'm almost scared. Am I ready? Never mind.
We only got one more full moon until the first day of
I don't know. I haven't followed it that closely, but 3 weeks, and then we're into the fall holy days. And you're going to say, what happened to the summer? It just started.
I'm ready to say bye to summer.
I'm not looking forward to winter.
I used to, this time of year, I'd be happy about the football season, but I don't know anymore. They've all gone crazy.
I won't be watching any football.
We haven't watched football in years. They had the XFL come out, and it was terrific. And then I think the NFL bankrupted them somehow. But so no football in my house.
Anything else?
Maybe this year, if they do what they say they're going to do, we'll see. Well,
I do want to bring up some news today in in Georgia. I don't remember. I don't know if it was Atlanta or where it was, but they busted a sex trafficking ring, and they freed 33 children and a dozen or more uh, women that were or people that were being trafficked that were above age. And there's been a lot of that going on since Trump took office. He's been going after pedophiles and sex traffickers like crazy. And it's not something, the reason I bring it up is because you're not going to see this on the news. If you watch CNN, you ain't going to hear about it. But it's been happening a lot, and he's actually turned up the heat on him, and he's aggressively looking to eliminate.
Yeah, I got a video today. A lady said to Trump, "Are you actively chasing down the world pedophile sex trafficking?" And he goes, "I don't know that. Is that a bad thing?" And he interrupted and said, "Is that a bad thing? You telling me it's a bad thing?" So,
he shouldn't tease the press because they're so out of it they can't take it.
Yeah, I know. He talks above them.
Yeah, like he said, I would delay the election because of all the fraud, and they couldn't. They didn't. Well, never mind.
They couldn't take it.
They couldn't take it.
All right, everyone. I want to thank you all for tuning in. I hope the rest of your Sabbath is wonderful, and we'll see you all again back here next week. Good night.
good night, everybody.
Good night.
We're happy you could make it, so glad you are here, and hope that we've been able to make God's word more clear. Until next time, may God be with you in everything you try. But for now, till next week, we've got to say goodbye.